down to Sheffield since the 70s, you know, and even though there's a few more motorways to help us, it still seems to take forever. You know, I left Birmingham at 3 o'clock and it still took me about 3.5 hours to get up here, so that's life. I'm sure there must have been a small club that we used to play in the Sheffield area before we went into the City Hall. But the small clubs, of course, were part of the groundwork that Priest and most bands become involved with in the early stages. When you're a Birmingham band like Priest was, and you have your own little following, your own little network around the pubs and clubs, and you start to spread out to various other parts of the UK, Sheffield was on the list right from day one, and we used to get in the 6-wheel transit and hike it up, you know, like Bad News, and break down every 15 minutes with a radiator that couldn't cope or an engine that couldn't cope, and get to the gig usually about 5 minutes before you were due on stage, and it was everybody out the van, get the gear out, put the gear up, then get on the stage, and, you know, vice versa. But that's part really of, I think, finding out just how much you love this business and how hungry you are for it, and, you know, just how much it means to you as a musician or collectively as a band. Well, most artists have a story to tell of wanting to break out of a system, you know, and I know that's pretty much the same as Sheffield, because obviously Leopard are from here, and we're very good friends with Leopard. I think Joe and I have had the conversation that it's the real drive of wanting to get away and escape and find something more out of your city situation or your town situation, and so it's very much in your blood to want to be hungrier and escape and to do bigger and better things. I can remember, you know, in my school days, just before I left school, that I used to walk past a big steel factory on my way to school in the morning and coming home at night, you know, and I can often recall, you know, walking past this big iron foundry with the molten metal coming out of these foundry vats and actually seeing it, you know. And then even while I was at school, there was a big stamping press works on the one side of the school, so you'd be in there studying English language literature and you'd have this big steam hammer going, you know, so it must have been instilled in my blood long before I got into heavy metal music, which is quite a fascinating thought. I still have my house in Walsall. In fact, I've just driven up from there, and you know, it's still very much home to me. I still love to go back to where I was born and bred, and my heart is there. We're very much working class people that have real basic roots at home and good values, and I think it's helped us really to stay level-headed and not go a little bit crazy like some people in rock and roll do. So it's always a big thrill for me to come back to my hometown and sleep in my own bed for a change instead of a hotel room. And I really love it, you know. It still means a great deal to me. I was round there the other day doing the weekly shopping before I came up here. Robert and I have become good friends. It's a nice feeling for me, because when Priest first began, of course, Zeppelin were an already established international worldwide act. And he used to go to a pub in Walsall that I used to frequent, and he used to stand up in one corner with his mates, knocking a few pints back, and I'd be in the other corner, you know, drinking my Vimto, which is all I could afford. And I'd be looking at this guy in awe, realising that this was somebody that had made it and was, you know, right on top of the ladder of success, and used to really inspire me to stick with the business and keep going. It's fun for me now, of course, to sit with him and talk about all the stuff that Zeppelin did and the stuff that Priest did, because I recall on one of the first major tours that we made of America, we'd been all over the country for something like 16 weeks, did over 150 shows, and we were about to fly back to England, and then the phone rang and said, Zeppelin are playing 2 big dates in San Francisco at this place called the Oakland Coliseum, which is like 90,000 people a show for 2 days. And Zeppelin want Priest to come and be on the bill. So, of course, we said, we've got to do it, you know. We'd never played the west coast of America anyway, so we got on the bus and travelled from one side of the country to the other side of the country. And we went on stage at about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, I think it was, because they had a curfew for, I think it was a baseball game later that night, so they had to get everybody out by 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we went on real early. We had breakfast before we did the gig, strangely enough. But that was the very last show Led Zeppelin played before, unfortunately, John Bonham died just a few days or weeks later.
Nobody's seen this for 100 years.